Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thanks for joining this webinar. Today we have the pleasure to welcome Mr. Gianvito Donghia, the managing partner of Creative Capital. Gianvito will give us a presentation today about the impact of the coronavirus on the Chinese market and the evolution of business model. Thanks for coming, Gianvito, and
My
I
pleasure.
give you the floor.
Thanks for the introduction, and good evening, everyone. So welcome to today's sharing. I'm very glad to be here to have this opportunity. Before jumping into the topic, I will give you a quick background of who I am and who is Creative Capital. Just to have, in this way, you will also better understand the angle that we use behind this analysis. So Creative Capital is a branding agency established 10 years ago in China. We belong to the Altavia Group, which is the French group, first independent communication group working in retail. The group has been established in France since 1983, and we are now in over 30 countries, including in China. So our structures in China is composed by 5 offices in the main strategic cities in China, and we are as well in Jakarta, Tokyo, Seoul, and Hong Kong. And Creative Capital, which is the creative arm of Altavia in China, is the branding agency that together with the retail activation team in Altavia, we help local brands and retailers to activate their sales in China. So we work in several industries, and we thought that during this challenging period for many brands in China, the best way to support them was to share with them some evolutions in terms of business models, especially from the retail and branding perspective, which are the 2 areas where we daily work. So today I'm going to share with you the evolutions of the business models, going through 6 main chapters, from retail to consumer behaviors, to communication, to education, smart working, and in the final sum up, we will see what is the new normal in China. So I will give you together an overview of what happened since February up to now to have a better understanding of how retailers and brand evolved in China. And it's interesting to know it because China is 2 months ahead compared to other countries in facing the challenges related to the coronavirus. So as everyone living in China experienced 2 months ago, all the offline retailers, they had to shut down. So we see just the numbers at that time in February from some international retailers. They show us that most of them, they had completely or almost completely shut down their offline point of sales. In general, during the first 2 weeks of the heat of the epidemic, the overall sales in retail, putting together online and offline, dropped by almost 21%. But if we consider only the offline retail sales, it would be even higher, this number. So how retailers reacted? By implementing what we call it worry-free narratives. So the worry-free narratives impacts 2 sides. First side, make consumers feel that all the operations are getting from offline to online, but you can order without being worried of the deliveries. So which means contactless delivery. And it's something that we experience in our daily life here in China, where retailers, they set up some pickup places or outside the point of sales or downstairs the building in order to ensure contactless delivery. So this is an important point in terms of operations that has been combined by most of retailers by the communication content to make consumers feel safe. So it has been done by many brands in China, and very important to feel consumers safe in placing their orders. And what is even more interesting for this point of view is that these worry-free narratives impacted as well also how brands interacted with consumers online. And it has been done mainly by live streaming sessions. This live streaming is a business models already existing in retail in China before the epidemic, but then it got even stronger in terms of industries, because it spread worldwide throughout several industries. I give you some examples. During the peak of the epidemic, we have shopping malls that have been running live streams programs in order to keep engaging with their consumers, such as SKP in Beijing, working together with brands such as Estée Lauder, Lancôme, and Kiehl's to promote the products through live streaming sessions. And it has been done as well in the furniture design industry, for example, like Easy Home, a local brand selling beds and pieces of furniture. But it has been done as well on even a higher degree of interaction by mixing together live streaming and virtual experience of the store. So this is an example coming from a collaboration between MixCity and Nike, Puma, and Fila, where they not only did sales through live streamings, but as well gave the opportunity to consumers to have a virtual experience of the store. This also affected the way brands started to launch new products during the heat of the coronavirus. This is an example from a collaboration between Tmall and Adidas Original, where they launched the limited editions through a live streaming sessions, and you see that in terms of views and also in terms of sales, the result has been really impacting. Live streaming sessions also evolved from something that is done through the brand's public accounts to sales assistants' private account. So especially in fashion, sales assistants and store managers, while the offline shops was closed, they have been trained to interact with consumers through their WeChat groups, where they started to promote new arrivals and as well discounted products by launching live streaming sessions and picture sharing within their WeChat group. And within the same groups, it was possible for consumers to actually place an order and buy online. The live streamings also helped, especially international brands during the Fashion Week, to keep interacting with local consumers in China. As you might know, it was impossible for Chinese buyers, designers, and celebrities to go to Europe to attend the Fashion Week, and at the same time, many international brands had to cancel, postpone, or run the fashion show without public. So in which way live streaming helped to evolve a traditional way to run a fashion show? We can understand it by sharing the example of what Dior did in China. So before running the fashion show, first they show messages of support to Wuhan through the WeChat account of the brand by using the local brand ambassadors. So in this way, we can feel how the narrative of the brand was changing in order to be more relevant for consumers during that specific period. And then while running the offline fashion show in Paris, at the same time, it has been broadcasted on live in China through live streaming. And the brand ambassadors of Dior's in China, they also upgraded and uploaded their profile pictures on Weibo by showing the outfits from the fashion show. So in this way, it was possible to keep creating an interaction with local buyers, local celebrities, and local consumers in China. And you can see that by the numbers that in terms of sharings, in terms of number of posts that has been generated, it has been a great example of how to generate a buzz online when you don't have the public coming offline. And live streaming also impacted traditional industries that they did not use to run this kind of interaction. Restaurants, for example. So most of restaurants had to shut down in China for the past 2 months, and many of them started to run live streaming sessions to introduce their dishes and to explain how to prepare them. And it had an impact in 2 ways. In one way, consumers at home got more interested in cooking by themselves, and we can see that at the same time, the sales on JD of cooking tools increased a lot compared to the pre-epidemic. And at the same time, also, it was a way for restaurants to keep selling their dishes, because if consumers were not willing to cook by themselves, they could directly place an order through JD or other e-commerce platforms and get the pre-packed ready dish at home. So it was a way to help offline traditional restaurants to keep engaging and selling with consumers online through live streaming. Live streaming has been really powerful and also really strongly impacting the industry in cosmetics. In cosmetics, even before the epidemic, using live streamings and KOL, so key opinion leaders and influencers, was already the standard in China. The one that you can see in the video here, Li Jiaqi, is the most famous one. He's an authority in his field in promoting cosmetic brands. But then he has been broadcasting and working on his channels right after the hit of the epidemic, since February 8th. And you can see that since the first day, in terms of views, he got millions of views, and he was able to sell out all the SKUs that he was promoting during the show. And then it still happens nowadays because he runs live streaming sessions every day, and his impact is so strong that even celebrities such as Zhang Ziyi, you can see a comment on the bottom of the slide, she was not able to buy what she wanted to buy because she was not fast enough in placing the order. So this is an example of how live streaming can be really helpful in helping retailers to keep selling and engaging with consumers during the epidemic. So it's a part of the evolution of the business models through the power of e-commerce and live streaming. E-commerce was really helpful as well to support traditional offline retailers with their problems of labor surplus. I share with you an interesting examples between Hema, which is the O2O fresh groceries chain from Alibaba, and JD. How they helped offline restaurants. So they had, being e-commerce platforms, a huge increase in terms of the numbers of deliveries and orders that they had to manage. An increase that was over 200% because most of the population in China had to order online. And what happens is that on the other side, we have traditional restaurants that they face a problem of labor surplus because most of the chains have to shut down, so all their offline employees, they are temporarily unemployed. So how to match these different needs and problems? These temporarily unemployed offline sales assistants or waitresses, they have been temporarily employed by Hema and also by other similar O2O new retailers. They have been trained for basic tasks such as packaging and also assembling and preparing the goods for delivery. And in this way, they have been used to support this problem of labor shortage that was faced by e-commerce retailers, and at the same time they have been helped because they had a temporary job during the epidemic while the restaurants being closed. It has been managed by an APP and platform of co-sharing the workers. And at the same time, e-commerce platforms such as JD, they helped restaurants not only by employing their employees, but also by delivery restaurants food online directly to consumers' place, to consumers' home. Here you have an example from Sipei, which is one of the biggest restaurant chains in China selling food from Shanxi. So during the heat of the epidemic, the sales dropped by almost 90%. So how they were able to recover in terms of sales? By partnering with JD. By partnering with JD, they were able to deliver their prepared and pre-cooked food directly to consumers, and together with all the tools that consumers need to cook it or to warm the food. And at the same time, it was possible for traditional restaurants in this way to better know their consumers, because JD shared with them also data information about consumers' preferences in terms of packaging and also in terms of tastes and food that has been ordered. So it is a way also to see how traditional business models in restaurants evolved through the collaborations with e-commerce platform. These evolutions in terms of business models it has been consistent with the evolutions of the consumer's behavior. So as we all experience in China during the heat of the epidemic, starting from the peak during the Spring Festival, consumers had to cancel all their plans in terms of going out, in terms of outdoor dining, restaurants, and shopping. And you can see from this data that refer to February that from tier 1 to 5 cities, so at any level, they all experience a huge decrease in terms of offline sales. So how consumers reacted to this impossibility to go out? By going online, as you might expect. But what is interesting to see here in terms of which kind of consumer segment had the highest time spending and also money spending online compared to the past is men over 50 years old. So because a younger consumer segment, such as teenagers or women, they were already more active online during the epidemic than what before the epidemic. What happens during the epidemic is that even traditional consumer segment, less active online, such as men over 50 years old, they became active users, both in terms of time that they spend online and also in terms of money that they spend online. And where do they spend and where they are more willing to spend money? On these categories, especially clothing, so food and beverage, daily necessity products, beauty products, household washing products. So this is a survey that show at that time in February, they have been asked which kind of product category you would be more likely to buy once the epidemic is over. And these are the categories that were the most preferred one. And we will later on compare this data with data that are more recent, coming from March. So these are the categories that expect a growth in terms of sales, but how is the buying behavior of these consumers be affected by the coronavirus? In 3 ways. First, consumers are they are more conservative in terms of spending behavior, probably because they feel instability regarding to their future and regarding also to their jobs. So people that has been interviewed during the same survey, 55%, they show a more conservative and rational spending behavior. So they need to plan ahead before spending. Another important factor impacting the way they spend is a higher awareness and sensitivity to eco-friendly, eco-consciousness issues and brands, mainly because the virus is believed to be originated from wild animal trading in Wuhan. So especially younger consumers are more sensitive to products that are green, to packaging that are green, and also to brands that are eco-consciousness from several points of view. And a third point, which is very interesting, we see that because of the epidemic, we have a higher preferences in local consumers for Chinese local brands. This proud of me trend, so these preferences towards made in China brands was already there before the epidemic, but it was more linked to an interest towards the country national heritage and culture embodied by local brands. But what happens during the epidemic is that this act of buying Chinese brand is being more an act to be supportive to local markets and local companies, so an act of solidarity. But for local brands, in order to be considered within their preferred choices by consumers, it is important that they show a commitment to support local Chinese society during the epidemic. In the same survey, consumers, they have been asked, how important is for you that brands did something to support local society during the epidemic? From 0 to 10, the average score has been 8.4, which means that the brands that were more distinctive from this point of view in terms of consumers' awareness and in terms of brand recognition has been local brands such as JD, Alibaba, Hema, Huawei, Meituan, which is a logistic delivery company, Alipay, those brands that has been during the epidemic the strongest one and the most active ones in engaging with consumers through tangible, specific, and positive social responsibility actions and campaigns. And in the following sections, we are going to see how actually brands adapted their communications and also their marketing campaigns in order to be more relevant for consumers during these sensitive months. So we would like to sum up actually what is common to these brands' actions to 4 main points. So brands, local brands in China, they showed a very positive and practical commitment to supporting local society by adjusting their customer social responsibility action and campaigns, by showing that they care for their own employees, so not only for consumers, and also by adjusting their customer relationship management services to customize the existing service to be more relevant for people that are locked down at home. Let's see some tangible example of what do we mean by doing actions within your field that are more relevant for consumers in a specific and special moment, such as the epidemic. Here is an example of what Baidu has been doing in China. So they increased the number of pages and functions in order to let local consumers to have a real-time monitoring of the evolution of the epidemic. And by going to Baidu Map, we can, during the epidemic, not only see how the epidemic is evolving at different province levels, but also within the district where we live, and also if there's been cases and where these people have been in the latest days. So it was a way to help consumers to use the power of data to monitor the evolution of the epidemic. Baidu as well, they launched a service of free consultations, so free medical consultations related to pneumonia, but also to psychological problems for people that had to stay at home, locked down for such a long time. And everything was for free. So it was another way for Baidu to show its commitment to help local people, to be close to local people in their specific needs. Baidu also launched a new video, a video online. Because of time issue, this one, we don't show it, we can skip it. But then I advise you to search for it, because it's a video where they really show their support to local society by showing how people in different fields were doing their best in order to rely on data to monitor the evolution of the epidemic. We move to another giant in China that also implemented really distinctive actions to help local communities, Alibaba. They did several actions. First, they donated 1 billion pounds to Wuhan hospitals. So the first way, more direct way to support local society, following what Jack Ma said right after the lockdown on Wuhan. So it's time to think what we can do for society. And consistently with this sentence, several platforms, so belonging to the Alibaba infrastructures, they started to actively support from different point of view local societies and communities affected by the epidemic. We see here an example where on Taobao, belonging to Alibaba, so they launched a new platform to help farmers in Hubei and Wuhan area to keep selling their products, so and to solve their problems related to overstocked, because the traditional logistic chains were shut down. So in this way, they helped local farmers to keep selling their products and to clear their stock due to logistic shutdown. Another interesting example, Aliyun, which is the IA service cloud platform belonging to Alibaba. So they share data that usually you have to pay in order to access this data. During the epidemic, all the data has been provided for free to several research institutes in China that were willing to collaborate with Aliyun in order to implement together research programs to support solutions for the epidemic. And to go on with Alibaba, Hema, the O2O new retail supermarket belonging to Alibaba, they supported Wuhan and Hubei by providing Wuhan hospitals with fresh meals and food for free. They provided as well Wuhan Zoo with food for free. So it's a way really to use your skills and capabilities as a fresh food retailers to support local communities through a tangible and practical action. But action could be that has a really strong impact. There were also small actions. I give you an example from Yili Group. Yili Group, it's one of the biggest producers of milk in China. After seeing these pictures where a nurse from Wuhan, she used the milk box plastic handle actually to lift up the mask plastic bands in order to release the pressure on the ears. Then they donated 15,000 milk boxes and plastic handles to hospitals in Wuhan. And by showing it as a small gesture. So you see the sentence on the pink paper say, the mask is tight, the ears are painful, let Yili help you to hold on for a while. So small actions that had a strong impact online. We have as well also CEOs of local companies in China, such as Lao Xianji, which is a local franchisee selling chicken, that published on their account a video to support its own employees by saying, don't worry, for the crisis, for the epidemic, we are not going to cut salaries. So it's important to see how brands adjusting their narratives in terms of communication, not only when communicated with consumers, but also when communicated with their own employees. And after this video got viral, the company got loan offering from major national banks. We have also more interactive and engaging way of showing support to consumers. That's a case from the Harbin beer, where they partner with League of Legends online game that they used to work with, and then they launched online a live streaming sessions called Happy Cheers Online, where they invited consumers at home together with 3 champions in the online game to cheers together. So it's a way for brands to show how you support, in a way, local consumers at home in an engaging and interacting way. And they issued as well a set of posters where they gave advices to people in different labor categories about how to go back work by protecting yourself and protecting the people around you. But we have also very clever moves in terms of adjusting commercial communications by local brands. This is an example from Yition, so e-commerce platform that they had already paid for their outdoor communication space, so before the epidemic. The period they paid for was between February 23rd and February 29th. Then they adjusted the content of the communication in order to be relevant for consumers that had to stay at home. So what they say there in Chinese character is, don't look at this advertisement. So if you are looking at this advertisement, it means that you are not at home, so it's wrong. So don't look at it, stay at home and wait for the spring to come. So it's a way to keep using the space that you had paid for in terms of communication, but in a way that is more relevant for consumers in a specific and difficult time. And local brands have been very good in China also in communicating all the efforts that their consumers were doing during the epidemic in order to keep running. The next one, next slide. So we see that all the brands in cosmetic especially, no matter what they used to produce, they also adjusted their production in terms of sanitizing products and masks, and as well by donating cosmetics products to help nurses with their skincare problems related to having the mask the whole day. And last but not least, international brands in China as well, they customized their existing services in order to serve people that had to stay at home. An example from Nike, where they adjusted their training sessions to 20 minutes working out training session at home, backed by their slogan, take the opportunity to raise a good habit and to share the habit with your family locked down with you at home. So it was a way to keep running your service, but adjust it in a way that is more relevant for consumers at home. Then we move to the last 2 sections that is still related to an evolution of the business model, but not in branding and in retail, but more in education and in the working field. So what has been interesting in China is to see how actually the shift from offline to online from schools has been actively supported by the Ministry of Education. So it was not an initiative run independently by schools, but has been supported by the Ministry of Education, backed by the slogan, stop classes, but don't stop learning. And as well, a lot of offline training centers, they turn their training sessions online for free. So it has been a way for these training centers to reduce their marketing costs, improve brand recognition, and as well potentially acquire new customers. The most successful one has been Yuan Futao, so an online training platform that during the first day of free online classes, they got 5 million people online at the same time. And these evolutions in terms of offline to engage with consumers. Not only education moved online during the epidemic, but we see that also our daily work moved online. So probably in your companies, as it happened in our company, since the first day back to work in February, we have been using TingTalk as a platform. Many other companies are using WeChat Work, for example. TingTalk has been the most downloaded app in the Apple Store in the month of February. So it's a platform through which companies can really move all their paperwork from offline to online, and as well get a strong help in monitoring also employees' healthy status and safety. So what happens in our company, for example, is that every day we have to input our body temperature through the TingTalk, and then we can get into the company, of course, only after being double-checked that our body temperature corresponds to what we registered in the platforms. And then I share with you a few functions, only a few because there are many more that we can use on TingTalk by doing administrative procedures, by doing all your HR management work, finance work, contract filling, contract approval, business meetings, everything can be run through TingTalk online. And so talking about it, we link the topic to the last part, which is how is the new normal in China now? Because using TingTalk, for example, is part of this new normal. How is the new normal that we are experiencing nowadays in China? The new normal is characterized by strong power of data. So we have a big data company that keep strongly working with government in order to use their data management power to keep monitoring the epidemic. And it is a very powerful and convenient service that we can experience every day in China. You probably have met also on the street this kind of robots that helped brands and retailers to deliver offline without any contacts. Robot has been used as well in hospitals in order to first approach patients without having any contacts, to protect doctors as well. And if you have been taking subways this day in China, you see that there is a thermal temperature body recognition before you enter subway in order to check each person's body temperature. As well, especially nowadays that we are back to the new normal. Yes, we are back to the new normal, but we are still keep monitoring and controlling the evolution of the epidemic by using this famous WeChat code that it's registered through our Alipay account, where by being green, yellow, or red shows to a restaurant or a working place where you went to get on if you have done your quarantine, or if you are come back from another city outside Shanghai, for example, and you are still in a kind of light quarantine in case of yellow, or red, which means you cannot go out and you are not entitled to get into any public place. And technology also helped as well to improve safety in daily life in China. So here there are some examples that have been put in place by restaurants to ensure that there is a distance between people during their meals, and also by limiting the number of people within elevators. And going back to how consumers are behaving now in this new normal, we can see that what it used to be new during the epidemic, such as education online, training sessions online, as well healthy fitness online, is something that, according to the service, will be kept doing by consumers. So consumers during the epidemic, they got these new habits online and they will keep running them even after the epidemic. So this O2O integration will stay there. And in terms of categories, the categories that probably are going to be the most positively affected in terms of consumptions are the categories related to health concern and healthy lifestyles. Last but not least, even after the heat of the epidemic, brand will keep communicating with consumers in a way that are relevant for consumers' new values. We talk about being eco-friendly and eco-consciousness. We see here an example from how KOLs in cosmetics, such as Austin Lee, they promoted new eyeshadow color palette, because it's the only part that we can see when we wear a mask, where each $1, the equivalent of $1 of each SKU, is donated to association protecting animals. And the same has been done to support now Wuhan, for example. The same KOL, they launched live streaming sessions where if the order is placed through a Wuhan address, they got product for free, or they even started to promote during the live streaming sessions local brands from Wuhan. So supporting Wuhan and Hubei is part of the new normal in China. So to sum up, what are the key words that we can use in order to summarize the evolutions of the business models in several industries? We would say 3 key words. Agility, so brands need to be agile. In order to be agile, they need to rely on technology, so they can rely on technology by being agile and move from offline to online. In terms of way to engaging with consumers, the common narrative is worry-free narrative, which means enable your consumers to place an order and got it delivered at home without being free about any potential infection worries, and as well by engaging with your consumers through a communication content which shows solidarity with local societies in China. So that's how we saw local brands and retailers changing and evolving in the last 2 months in China. Of course, if you have comments now or also something that you want to share from your own experience by living in China, we can use this opportunity to interact.
Okay, thanks a lot, Gianvito, for the presentation. I heard some guests, they have some issue with the sound. Everything will be fixed for the replay, as we will play the video on LinkedIn and on our website. So if you want to watch again this webinar, it will be available on our media. We received some questions before the event already. You answered most of them during your presentation, but there is one question that may be interesting for the guest. It's like, do you think the virus has changed the way of working on the long term or just a short term?
Yeah.
According to you.
According to not only my personal opinion, but also the way we adjusted the business models in Creative Capital and in Altavia in China, is that definitely the virus impacted the way we work in a positive way, because we moved all of our traditional operations, working papers related tasks from offline to online. So we received as well specific training in terms of how to run all the operations online through TikTok, for example, and we decided to keep doing it even after the epidemic. So we transferred all our files, all the information on each department online through these applications, and it improved a lot in terms of efficiency, speed, and power sharing our daily work. So we will keep using even after, and I guess it will be the same for all the companies in China.
Even for us.
Yeah.
Okay, you answered all the questions in your presentation, so I guess we can stop this webinar now. Thanks a lot for watching. We will put all the replay on the different media of the chamber, and we will fix the technical issue. Thanks.
Yeah. No problem.
Anyway,
Thanks.
if you have
Yeah.
something else to add
Just to say that if anyone is interesting to know more about also retails and business models evolution in China, they can contact of course, the Chamber of Commerce and as well ourselves in Creative Capital by reaching us by email as well.
For sure. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.